Welcome to Wisdom Unveiled. We're happy you've joined us for the study and discussions on the Emerald Tablets by Billy Carson and other authors. Parisha, an ancient text interpreter and tablet reader, will be hosting this weekly event. She'll be joined by associate speakers from the LCF HD each session, and lines will be open for discussions. So join us on Mondays at 5:30 Pacific Time as we complete the book, and it will be on our YouTube channel, Learning Center for Human Development. And check out our blog at emeraldtabletstudies.com. We will schedule to have anyone that has further studies to join us on the session and share your knowledge. Join us as we read and discuss over the next few weeks the mysteries of time before time. There are many researchers who say this is the source of our religious scriptures and written by God Himself. Come with us on this journey of discovery. Now here is our host, Parisha.
So we're going to actually begin with chapter 3 this week. And we have a few people that are going to come in and actually share with us some of the high points of what they got out of the thing. But when we're reading especially any of the quotes from Toth that we have in our book and we're reading them, I will share what I feel very easy to share with you on my experiences as a tablet reader for 55 years. So there are things that I feel are actually how Billy sees things, and I'm very happy with his particular perception of things. That's why I want to compliment this book. But at the same time, there are things that still have a little bit more religious inclination than what I feel comfortable with, because the tablets, while we know them as pretty much New Testament and scriptures, okay, they really are very esoterical and universal in what they're saying. So when we keep bringing it back and actually looking at it in how it fits with Christian scripture, this week we have a number of people, and I hope that all of you who are interested and are coming in with this and being with us would actually participate, okay? That when you know of another particular religion or philosophy that is pretty much saying the same thing, I just feel it's more respectful that we reflect that this is talking to many, many people, not just Christian people or people that are of the frame of mind of Jesus Christ. So both Zachariah Stitchin and Billy is staying pretty close to that. When I read it, because I've studied theology for most of my life, just wanting to know how everybody worships and respecting it, I see a lot of parallels in what I read in the tablets, not just how it applies to Christian religious scripture. So I want you to do that, like you know, I'm sure many of you have pursued this with other people, not just Billy's book. And if that's the case, please share whatever it says, even if it's totally different, 180 degree, or even if it's controversially, confrontatively different. Please speak up. That's all we all know. We just need to hear and know. All right, Lois, you want to actually share what it is that you found in the first part of the chapter? Lois is from Oklahoma, Tahlequah, Oklahoma. All right, welcome, Lois.
In the first part of this chapter, I thought it was very interesting that he again talks about the Emerald Tablets, reincarnation, and how that relates to Christianity. And as you say, there's some religions that have reincarnation as their main tenet, one of their tenets in their religion, such as the various Indian religions, such as Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, and Sikhism. But the Christian religion doesn't necessarily, that's not a part of their main tenet is reincarnation. One of the things that I found interesting is when we are talking about reincarnation, which is actually means entering the flesh again, is I think about some of the things that we have been studying with Nassim Harriman, who talks about that space is not empty and that there is all kinds of things in space and it's filled with energy, etc. And then I also think about working with Dr. Joe Dispenza. And one of the things I found in closing my eyes to go into meditation, one of the things he says is that you are aware. And so it led me to believe reincarnation is something that comes because I am aware when I feel no body, no space, no time. And so, and I think this is what perhaps as Thor is talking about in these emerald tablets, again, is the reincarnation, and that it's living from eon to eon and generation to generation.
All right. Thank you very much. Very clear. I also think that we have, Brooke, are you there that you wanted to share?
So I wanted to share a little bit. I wanted to start on page 35. Billy mentions that the men of Chem, which is on the above quote, is refers to the people of Egypt, and that we get our the word alchemy from the word chem. So I wanted to look up the word chem, or the word alchemy, the origins of the word alchemy, because it seemed a little interesting. So the our word alchemy could have come from the hieroglyph Khmi, which is spelled Khmi. Khmi stands for black earth, and in another derivation, alchemy means Egyptian art. And then if we look at the Arabic word alchemia, which means, it means the Egyptian science. This, according to a Egyptologist named Wallace Budge. Then if we go back to the ancient word of chem, it referred to the country of Egypt as well as the color black. Why black? Well, Egypt was called the Black Land because of the soil from the Nile, which contrasted with the red desert around it. Then if we go back to the Egyptian definition of chemistry, which is derived from the word alchemy, it means transmutation of earth. This is the science of matter at the atomic to molecular scale. How, though, did they know about this kind of knowledge when this only has been discovered more recently? Maybe the knowledge came from Thoth's teachings and wisdom, as well as advanced technology that he may have possessed. So that was a little bit that I found on the word origins of alchemy, so I wanted to go back to the book.
Right.
So
Thank you.
So Thoth also,
It's so refreshing to see you young people come on, because I knew that we would have the seasoned people, my age and younger maybe, but it's so wonderful to see you young guys getting on and actually digging into this. That's what it's all about. As long as we can help you stay on track, we can expect a great reincarnation. So we're going to do all we can to help you. Okay. Now, there was some people that wanted to share something else within that particular. Can you raise your hand? Let us know who that was. Somebody wanted to talk about the protection CSF. That's Deb. Okay, we have Deb Adler in Arizona. Okay.
Yes. I was going to talk about the reference that was made to the River of Life, and actually the juxtaposition with Stedman's Medical Dictionary and the reference of the river of cerebral spinal fluid into the 4 chambers of the brain. The brain contains 4 fluid-filled chambers, which are ventricles. And there's 2 lateral ventricles, which occupy a cerebral hemisphere. The 3rd ventricle is connected by a passage to each of the other 2 lateral ventricles. And the 4th connects to a 3rd ventricle via the cerebral aqueduct to the central canal of the spinal cord, which is a narrow central tube that expands the whole length of the spinal cord. And the functions of the 4 cavities called ventricles that are filled with the cerebral spinal fluid is that it absorbs physical shocks to the brain, it distributes nutritive materials to and removes waste from the nervous tissues, and it provides a chemically safe environment. It's actually a communicating system of cavities within the brain that are responsible for the production, the transport, and the removal of the cerebral spinal fluid, which bathes the central nervous system. And in the context of the river of life and cellular regeneration. This is really a closed system within the human body that does exactly that. So for that reference to be, again, as Brooks mentioned so early in Toth's references, I just find that extraordinary, that it really is a direct parallel almost of that regenerative ability and capability of the body.
Okay, very good. Anybody have anything you want to add to that? You got Gabby over in the corner there. Yeah, Gabby, in Mount Beauty, Australia, right?
I am in Mount Beauty, Australia. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Look, I looked up a little bit about cellular regeneration and where we're at in 2020 in our research, because as we all know, it is a process of renewal and restoration and growth of systems in the body, such as cells and organisms that may have been damaged or disturbed. So it includes regrowth of tissues, and that is what cellular regeneration means. Now, in our current human stem cell research, which are the cells that can actually grow into or develop into different types of cells, currently science says that adult tissues may have the latent capacity to regenerate. And although this is a breakthrough, they are saying the ultimate goal of regenerating organs fully is still distant. So I just want to share that with what is happening to Toth when he goes into the halls of Amenti, just as a comparison. Also, briefly, I looked into some other religions. We're talking about Judgment Day when Toth says, "In a time yet unborn, I will rise again mighty and potent, requiring an accounting of those left behind me." Talking about Judgment Day, in Christianity of religions, it's generally believed to be one day where everyone is judged according to their thought, words, and deeds. Now, in Christianity, they speak of an apocalyptic event before the creation of a new world or a new manifestation of God. Then I also looked into the Islamic belief and the Quran. And the Quran also speaks about Judgment Day. In chapter 99, verse 6 to 8, it says, "On that day, people will come forward in separate groups to be shown their deeds. Whoever has done an atom's weight of good will see it, but whoever has done an atom's weight of evil will see that." So there's on one hand a reward, on the other punishment, but also the Quran says what is also mentioned in the Emerald Tablets by Toth: why should God make you suffer torment if you are thankful and believe him? God always rewards gratitude. He knows everything, in chapter 4, verse 147. So that is what Toth says too. And to finish off, I looked at the Bhagavad Gita, one of the Hindu holy scriptures, and they talk about the souls that occupy the human body have sufficient intelligence to discern right from wrong. So hence judgment can be made. And they are saying, if a human being does not use this precious human life for this purpose and lives in communion with God, it becomes punishable. And for them, a little bit different. Judgment Day is the time of death, and the ultimate goal is the liberation from the cycle of rebirth and death. Now, I want to finish off with something that Paramahansa Yogananda has written in his research. He is a Hindu yogi who came to America in the early 30s to bring the Eastern religion to the West, and I'm very fond of him. Now, he said, in his research on this subject, God is infinitely compassionate. In the communion of oneness with God, every wrong will be made right, every mistake corrected. And I would like to end with a quote from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 66. "Simply surrender unto me. I shall absolve you all sins. Do not fear."
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, I see Mike, you have something you want to add to that? Mike is in Montreal, Canada.
Okay, cool. I actually was going to take this in a little bit of a different direction. Right at the beginning of the chapter, in fact, on the cover of this chapter page, Billy says, in this chapter, I will establish the true source of the teachings of Jesus. So when I got to this page, it was a little bit like, wow, this is going to be interesting. And he goes on to say, it appears that most of the biblical teachings and statements come directly from the Emerald Tablets. So me being a good, well-brought-up Catholic boy, indoctrinated for years by the Jesuits, have all this stuff that I'm carrying around. And I see that and I go, there's got to be a bunch of other people out there like me who would be horrified at a statement like this. So, you know, is there any other people out there saying this kind of thing? And I ran into something that I thought was kind of interesting, and I have to admit I haven't tracked it down completely because I haven't figured out the relationship between Horus and Hermes yet, or Thoth. But I found quite an interesting comparison between Horus in the Egyptian mythology and Jesus. And I thought maybe I'd just throw this out there for food for thought for people thinking that this was all new stuff. Horus, in the legends of Horus, Horus was conceived by a virgin mother named Mary, M-E-R-I, had a stepfather named Jeb, or Joseph. He was born in a cave, his birth announced by an angel, heralded by a star, and attended by shepherds. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
He was baptized in a river at the age of 30, and his baptizer was later beheaded. He had 12 disciples. This is Horus I'm talking about now, in case you forgot. He delivered a Sermon on the Mount, and his followers recounted and played over what he said on the Mount. He was transfigured on the Mount. He was crucified between two thieves, buried for 3 days in a tomb, and was resurrected. So when I saw this first thing and I started searching and I ran into this, it was like, holy mackerel, there's a whole bunch of other things going on here. So I better listen to what these tablets have to say. So It was just kind of for me, just like an impactful moment, just reading the first page of this cover of this chapter.
Yeah. And can you share this? Where did you get the material? Where did you find it?
You know, I went on Google, and I Googled Horus and Jesus comparison, and I actually found something on the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science. And there's, many sites that will actually explain this. What I'm trying to figure out was, what was the relationship between Horus in the mythology and Hermes? I know it's close, but it's not the same person, I don't believe. I think they're different, but I haven't figured that part out. So somebody better versed in Egyptian mythology can help me out, maybe.
I'd like to say something to that, only because of how many years I've studied this, and definitely kind of bewildered in the beginning of my working and learning to interpret, okay? And if we would but realize today the advantage that we have because of quantum physics and all of the new sciences, the spiritual sciences that we're learning, the understanding we're not alone in the universe, the understanding of how very seeded alien, if that's what we want to call it, intelligence. My people say the ancients, we don't call them aliens. They're not alien to us, okay? So when you look at all that we know, and then you understand in the sciences how time doesn't exist other than in your thinking and my thinking. We think time. Time does not exist anywhere else. And the more you explore and can do a lot of out-of-body travel, you become really, really aware of just how real that is every day in our life, that we're just not at all coherent with it, okay? So when I find circumstances like you have there, Mike, and I have seen that repeated in many tablets, that you'll be reading. In fact, my head would do it like, okay, whose tablet is this? Because it's like, I remember reading it over there and those people were claiming it, and it's like, so when you realize that it's moving parallel to each other, like what you're seeing with Hermes and the whole problem that we're looking with the interpretation of the tablets here. They're all saying the same thing. And when the only way I have found that I can deal with that is that I realize that in our mind, we're trying to separate it with time. So we're measuring matter with matter. We're trying to count it up in some length. Remember, in numerology, we're studying, is it, we can use numbers as numbers or figures. So when we're saying they're figures, we're using them to do mathematics. Well, if we actually understand all of that, we realize that and I know that some of you may be very far advanced in your studies, actually hear often, okay, everything is right now. There is no past, there is no future. Everything is right now. And so when we have all these names, and I tell you, it's really not uncommon in the tablets. When you have all these names and all of these so-called time periods, and then you hear them all saying pretty much verbatim the same thing, okay? The only place you can go with that is actually equate it to we're actually being able to participate in parallel world existence. Because then when we think, when we're reading about Thoth, who of any of you can actually fathom living 36,000 years? You know, I'm 79 this year, and when I think, you know, that I'm looking at 80, and now you're going to talk about 36,000. You know, I mean, if there's probably one dried up cell left of whatever this body is in 36,000 years, you know what I'm saying? So we have not allowed, our neural net cannot handle that. So we have to come back, and at this point, if we try to make it fit, and I know where you're coming from, Mike, because you are a good mathematician and an engineer, you need to see the structure of it all, right? But you have to, at this point, just do some of the unknown and let it just kind of float out there and not try to actually place it. Give it a chance to have a different kind of experience for you. We'll all experience these tablets differently. And I do definitely appreciate it. I'd not heard that, and I will go check further in that. And Gabby, it was good to have you parallel some of the particular manner of speech here to other religions and other people's worship. I like that. Okay. But what my point is after many, many years of doing this and coming into this through an indigenous Native American manner of looking at the tablets. And you have to realize that Dr. Rael, that's actually, Rael is his name? Doriel, thank you. Doriel's interpretation here is he's put this, he interpreted it in this kind of language. And it's sort of the same thing that Stitchin did, and it definitely is the same thing that Edgar Casey did. And so when I look at that, I find myself stepping back from that. And I've been very, very definitely accused of being anti-Christ. I am absolutely not anti-Christ, but I am anti-bullshit, okay, really. Okay, so at this point, you have to begin to realize that this wraps not only around us as humans, but you have to realize when we read in this and how Thoth in those 36,000 years was out there in the universe and doing all kinds of planetary travel and everything else. We cannot minimize this to any one particular persuasion of what we have here on Earth. And so many, many times, especially in working and being born in the southeastern states of the United States, I was in the Bible Belt. So I've had experience with the Bible from front to cover many, many times. And when I look at that, I always realize that, again, we tend to limit exactly how we look at things because we narrow it down and try to put it in our little box so we can understand it. And with this, I don't want you to do that. I want you to be here with me and let me kind of take you through some curves and swerves with it and actually realize it's talking to us, not from way back there, but right now, right here. Everything that's unfolding with this virus, everything that's happening with the satellites, everything that's happening. I was being taught that is a prophecy when I was at least 4 to 7 years old. Okay, so here at 79, I am prepared for what's unfolding because I've lived it my whole life. You are at that same level. You're just not coherent about it. There's the only divisions between us is what we make of ourselves, and we put the doorways there. Thoth is talking very, very directly to today, not then, and not any other incarnation, but all incarnations. And whether or not you will choose to incarnate, because it is a choice, okay, to come in, you will have to deal with why you decided that that was something you did, because you're all chosen. There's nobody that gets through the veil into this dimension that has not been chosen. So you have value, you have particulars, you have uniquenesses. And as long as you're trying very hard to fit all of this together, you'll lose some part of yourself because you have been minimized. You have been made afraid of the power of Creator. You deal with heaven and hell, right, wrong, good and bad, positive and negative. And that doesn't exist any place but here. Okay, so when we're reading this, we need to come back and deal with it. Even where Dr. Durrell actually interprets some of Thoth's statements, and we'll go back and read Thoth's statements after a few people share, that where he actually gets into Thoth threatening people that he'll come back and take on punishing them for misuse of this. I can tell you, I've read this whole first tablet at least 17 times, and there's not a damn word in there that interprets that. None. There is nothing in the tablets that's threatening us. Nothing Thoth ever put from his mouth was that there would be restitution for you and I making our mistakes, failing, falling down, getting back up, and keeping trying. If anything, it always encouraged us, no matter how bad it got, no matter how much we failed, no matter how low we possibly sunk in vibration, there was always the lifting up. And that's what these tablets bring us. So I get into that pretty strong when I start reading how that was interpreted. It actually, how it interprets is that we create our hell. We punish ourselves. We're doing it to us. We have guilt, and then we have fear of that guilt. And then we have fear that somebody will find it out, or what somebody would think of us because of it. And we begin to create everything that actually becomes whatever we think God's punishment is. Okay, it would be so ignorant to say you love an all-knowing God and that it does not allow for you to evolve by exploring everything that you can till you find where you can finally stand. We let our children, as children, we encourage our children to explore. And when they don't quite succeed, or they fall, or even when they get whatever you call bad, we still love them. We still try to get them to turn it around and bring it back into focus. We come to some point to where we stop trying to impress them that they should do it our way. And then you begin to know them. You begin to look at them and learn who they are, not what you wanted them to be. And if we can do that in the particular frequency we're evolving body through right now, you know, that we call the Creator, that is out there in the soup of it all, surely is not threatening you that if you don't do it, that you're going to come back and you're going to burn in hell forever. I can tell you that was not ever in the Emerald Tablets, not ever. So we want to deal with that. Again, we come into Christian perspective on that. And this is not, when you read this, when I read this, I don't have any religions in mind at all. When my first exposure to these tablets, there was nothing that rang in it as religion to me. It was all science. It was all science. And then my pursuit into science was to discover even more what the messages were, to understand them more. And over 55 years ago, I started teaching quantum physics, and everybody thought I was nuts. Okay, so right now is the best time in the world for us to actually bring these teachings forward, and you finding out how you sit with it. You know, it's talking to you, it's talking to me, it's talking to all of us right now. And where we want to go and where we can take it is still up to us. And however far you choose to do that will not determine that you stay in hell or get lost in the bardo. You will go through where you have to go, and it will be by your determination. The tablets make that very clear. Okay. And so we want to get into discussing that. But right now there was a couple of other people that had comments. So could you show me your hand so that I know who's going to talk now? Okay. I have Maya. Can I get Maya on here? Maya's in Sydney, Australia. And I see that beautiful young face, Maya. Unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hello. So today I wanted to share a little bit on pages 37 to 39, where it really brings to light the correlation between Jesus and Thoth and how much the Old and New Testaments are referencing back to the Emerald Tablets, which for me, of course, I found really interesting because not having a very deep understanding of the biblical text, but looking at short snippets as well as further research into statements. It brings to light not only the repetitive point of reincarnation, as Thoth states, that they did not live and die, but rather from eon to eon, they did renew their life in the halls of amenity, where the river of life flows internally onward, which can be directly correlated with our amazing function of our human anatomy, as Deb shared earlier, reflecting how cerebrospinal fluid, which is the fluid that encapsulates our brain and spinal cord, allowing current to flow through it, sustaining our thinking and functional life as we know it. As we come back to this arena where water can be seen throughout many literatures, including the beginning of our planets in the primordial waters to the creation and continuation of who we are as beings, how not only we are 70% water, but the earth is 70% water, bringing to light this connection that what is inside us is also outside and the continuation of all. But why do we not know of such marvels? And it comes back to the holding back of knowledge, so the few can excel, keeping the masses in the dark, which can be seen throughout history, including that which we are currently seeing throughout the world today, with the government responses and initiatives around COVID-19. Further, the realm of duality comes to front, as death is not bad and birth is not good. It is just a change, as many before us share, with us including that of the work of Matthias de Stefano on Gaia. But everything in life changes, and this is the only constant here. The photo that Billy Carson shares with us on page 38, we see the transition between forms, once again showing the nature of duality, dark and light. This balance of life is crucial because, as you may know, and taking a look at concepts such as happiness, we see if we did not know the opposite, sadness, how would we know happiness? Would we always be in a concept of happiness, but not knowing because you have not experienced opposites? We need both to exist in the world we see today. Furthermore, I found the answer between the correlation between Thoth and Enki within this chapter, also known as Thomes or the Dweller, who is the father of Thoth. Looking at this and this wisdom within the Anunnaki Chronicles, this in-depth creation story between Enki and Enlil, wherein extremely short, and I do encourage you to investigate for yourself. The Anunnaki beings brought down to make their so-called slave race. The Enki falls in love with our human race. And here we find, within the Emerald Tablets, how Thoth was chosen from the sons of man taught by Enki so that his purpose can be fulfilled on earth. Furthermore, within the statements on page 42, it further brings to light that how sons of men and children of light, when they are not incarnate in a physical body, further emphasizing the state of how we are an eternal spirit. We truly are living in a magnificent life of possibilities, that through learning and understanding more, it just seems like there's more and more to this story that we call life. And now I'd like to hand back to our presenters and co-host.
All right. Thank you very much. And again, it's wonderful to see you young people actually jumping in. All right. People are saying letting us know you have things to say. Somebody raise your hand and you have anything to add? Trina Cooper in Denver, Colorado.
Hi. Yes, one of the things about these pages in this particular chapter, it is very heavy on the Christian side of things, and where he's trying to show that Jesus is Thoth, or that Jesus is speaking as Thoth has spoken. And he refers to Malachi in this. And so I'm going to give just a little bit of a Christian background. Like Michael, I was brought up in the Catholic Church by Jesuits, as a matter of fact. And so grew up knowing a lot about what was in the Bible and what wasn't. Now, Malachi was one of he's the last prophet that is recorded in the Old Testament. And so when they actually said in here, these are the last words in the Old Testament, they actually are the last words that were spoken in the Old Testament. Now, if you know, the Old Testament is actually the Bible for the Judaic tradition. And then the New Testament is added to that to create the Bible for the Christians. And Malachi is quoted quite often with his prophecies of Elijah coming again. Elijah actually he was actually back in the book of Kings, which was quite a bit back in the Old Testament. And it was prophesied he was coming forward. It was prophesied he would come again, and he would come again, and he would come leading in the teacher, leading in, as in the Bible says, Jesus, who was going to be the Messiah. Now, there's many people who claim that John the Baptist was Elijah, but no more importantly than Jesus himself. And this quote that was in here from 11:14 Matthew said, "For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John, and if ye will receive it, this is Elias, which was for to come." So right in that statement, Jesus recognized that Elijah was coming forward, reincarnated as John, and he also brought forth the ideas of reincarnation when he spoke about reincarnation and coming back again. If you go to the word reincarnation, it means coming back into body. And all through the Bible, it talks about another coming, about people coming in to the body again, where it may not be specific that you're reincarnating into different lives and different lives and different lives. It does speak to reincarnation, people coming back again. And looking at a little bit of the research, there was reincarnation taught in the Bible, in the Christian tradition, up until about the Council of Nicaea in about 325 AD, where they actually came together and said, here's what we're going to teach. They took the feminine out. They took a lot of the more, some people might say, esoteric teachings, but a lot of the teachings that came forward now that they're seeing in the books from the Nag Hammadi library, which were scrolls that were found back in the 1940s from different sects of Christianity, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, which was more of the Old Testament teachings. They're now seeing that there's such a richness in what was being taught. And there's quite a few different scholars that are moving forward now saying, these are the things that were being taught. These were the things that are being brought forward. And they were lost over time, and they were changed. And the bottom line is, as he brought forward in this, they needed to control the people. And if people believed in reincarnation, as he said in this, they would say, oh, well, then I'll just do it next lifetime. I'm just going to do whatever I want to this lifetime. So allowing that knowledge to come forward and to believe in this, as Jesus said in this, he said, for those who have ears to hear and eyes to see, you had to be able to listen. He spoke in parables. He spoke where people could understand one level, then a deeper level, and a deeper level. And so when you look at what is said in John 14, he actually does tell us that anything that he did, we should be able to do and more, which is telling us that if he rose and was reincarnated and came back to the physical, we would do exactly the same. But he never turned away from the idea of reincarnation. He always supported it. And you have to look deeper into those teachings in order to understand or to actually hear it. So if you have the ears to hear this, just know that this was there. This was all being brought forward. And some of us have turned a dumb ear to it, but not anymore.
When you understand reincarnation and you don't have fear of death, you actually come to understand the seasons of life, like from one life to another, no different than the seasonal changes of our planet. You begin to see the real common reality in what we're reading and studying here. And one of the things that impressed me at a very early age in actually observing Christian practice, and especially the fundamental Christian influence in the southeastern parts of this country, is that I started watching how very rigid and hard it made it. And one of the things that I often pondered as I was coming in, and actually all the years of my being teacher, so from birth till I was 20 years old, I was constantly being taught, okay, and not allowed to have social life or anything else, just to be totally devoted to the wisdom, okay. There's a passage in what we have here that Billy shares, to where Jesus, in speaking to his disciples, talks about the fact that with John the Baptist, who have come from a very high order, that they would cut his head off. And Jesus phrases that they will do to me as well. And knowing that, I mean, if you have any perception and you have any real experience of being able to see things ahead of time, do you understand the faith that it took for this being in a human body, actually dealing with the same body understanding of pain, emotions, and everything else, to know now how he ends up is that they whip the skin off of his body and they hang him and they crucify him. Pay attention to me. The most important part of that is that when he knows it's coming and he's actually realizing it has to be, okay, and they go to crucify him, even he in those moments called out and asked, Father, have you forsaken me? So even after undergoing all of that, the humanness of him, still wanting to hang in there and be as he knew he had to be here in his purpose of being here. He still wanted just that moment of assurance that everything is as it should be. And that from this point, we move into whatever higher consciousness or reality there is. I have talked to many clergy people, and when I see a lot of what's going on, I ask them to help me understand how one has the courage to live out a life plan like that. And still, even in the final moments, not worrying about faltering or sinning or not doing it right or whatever. But even then, in this glorified being, there was a moment where he wanted to be reassured that everything was as he was planned to be. And in that gives me the courage to know that we, coming in and evolving through these particular human bodies and taking consciousness to a higher level, you know, we have to be willing to face what we took on when we said we're going in. and when you picked up these bodies. You have to think about what it is you really committed to, because there's no exception to us. We each have that role. I know in your studies and in your pursuits and all that you're trying to understand, down deep inside you, you know you're here. You're here on time, and you're here exactly when you should be. We agreed to this. So then it's just a matter of when we come together, and I'm so complimented that you come together in this time with me, that we discuss this and move with this, that you somehow feel way in there, you hear it talking to you, and you know that Thoth, who was of man, and took 36,000 years to evolve to the godly state that he was, made sure these tablets survived and we had a pathway. So you have as great a calling, and in whatever your emotional ability is, you will deal with that. Because as long as we live through emotion, we will live to the weakest part of what we can be. Our fears take away truths and blind us. To not understand death is to deny the knowledge of reincarnation. To realize our coming and going is as easy as catching the streetcar every night to go home in New York City. And that we find peace with that so that we can live fully every day of this existence, every day. Every day is Sabbath. Every day the sun comes. So it is the Sabbath. And from that sunrise to that time of moon rising, you have lived a lifetime. And because we measure it so different in the actual lost that we are in time here, you don't have recall of all that you have actually done through this day. And in quantum physics, we're finally learning that. In quantum physics, you're starting to realize there's so much that went on with that little distraction you had, or that heartfelt moment that you had. And that you're learning that you can breathe through your heart, that you can actually start doing and bringing this body back to an awakened power. Thoth is telling us that, and actually tells us and encourages us that however long it takes, or wherever you're at, and I believe if you're here in the earth at this point, with all the prophecies of the people I've studied all my life, every one of you are here on purpose. That every being on the planet at this time is here on purpose. Okay, so when we know that, let us at least come at this willing to even take it further. You know, like I said last week, children of God, what do you grow up to be? You cannot wither and cry and emotionally think that you can look at things and know what the heck you're talking about. Soon as that chemistry starts and this body goes into emotional reaction, intelligence goes that way. So as long as you're emotionally reacting, you're feeding something that you don't want to have happen. It's when you calm yourself down and apply yourself in the joyful state of thinking in the things that you want it to be. Then and only then will we learn exactly what these tablets are all about. So in going with that, let's go on. Is there anybody else before I start reading the actual tablets and us talking about them? Is there somebody else that maybe found something you want to share before I go on? All right, Robbie has something she wants to add.
Yes.
Robbie's in Arizona.
Yes, I just wanted to add something to what Trina said. The decision was made to remove the doctrine of reincarnation from the church and from the Bible. A lot of it was based on a political ploy by the emperor, the Byzantine Emperor Justinian, and his wife, the Empress Theodora. Theodora started out with very humble means and worked her way up through the court system at the time, eventually becoming the concubine of the emperor and then eventually becoming his wife. She's considered by a lot of people to be one of the most powerful women in history, because during that time period, almost every decision that was made, almost every law that was passed had her name behind it. She did a lot of really good things. For example, she gave right. She had laws passed that gave rights to women, but she also was she was extremely ambitious. And at some point, she decided that she wanted to become deified. It wasn't enough for her to be the empress. She wanted to become deified, but that wasn't going to work in her favor. I mean, reincarnation wasn't going to work in her favor, because how could you be considered an eternal goddess if you were going to have to come back and be reborn again? So she and her husband worked out a strategy and brought in a lot of different political leaders and church leaders and got them to support her in her desire to have reincarnation, stricken from the doctrine, as a doctrine from the church. So she was a major player behind that decision to have reincarnation from the Bible, because up until that point, it was commonly accepted by all Christians. It was a Christian belief. Reincarnation was ordinary and accepted. So it was at that point in the century that it was removed, and from that point forward, Christians have stopped believing in it. So, most Christians.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you. Okay. Then let's go back to page 34. And I'm going to ask Steve, why don't you read where we say that and Toth said, I, Toth, the Atlantean. Are you there?
So I, Toth, the Atlantean, master of mysteries, keeper of records, mighty king, magician, living from generation to generation, being about to pass into the halls of Amenti.
Okay, you can't do that. You're too close. All right. I'm going to ask someone else to read that's over there. Hey, Darren, present. Can you get to your mic and read that first part of, as Toth said, I, Toth, the Atlantean? I saw Darlene. There you are.
I, Thoth, the Atlantean, master of mysteries, keeper of records, mighty king, magician, living from generation to generation, being about to pass into the halls of Amenti. These records of the mighty wisdom of great Atlantis set down for the guidance of those who are to come after. In the great city of Kior on the island of Undal, in a time far past, I began this incarnation, not as the little man of the...
Okay. When you're looking at that, how have any of you, and please share, how have you dealt with the word magician? Because in the tablets, it doesn't translate to magician. It actually translates it doesn't say magic, it says to the wisdom. Oh. So when we're saying magician here, I think with Dr. Durrell, that the way he could only express that from the way the tablets say it, is the tablets say that we at the point of our awakening performs things way beyond the common reality or the common acceptance, that those who become masters have powers that they can use through just the initiations of all that. So he actually, where he's using the word magician, there's a manner of how the tablet speaks of that one that is empowered, okay? And so basically, most people just say wisdom, where he's actually said magician, meaning he has the powers to do things that aren't quite earthly known, or what maybe the average evolving person has come to actually have, okay? And so then we come down to the next part, these records. he's actually letting us know that at this time of Atlantis, which there is a tremendous amount of prophecies, very much stuff today in South America, into Mexico, and actually coming up into the United States and North America, okay, that actually talks about the Atlanteans, and that a lot of the native, especially with what you have as far as Hopi and some of the South Western people, the Pueblo people, they all have the DNA that is totally unusual and actually is what we're considering Atlantis, some of the Atlantean DNA that's come up. We also, I shared with people here that I sit with often, and we study and share material, that actually there was a man named Perry in North Carolina whose daughter had his ancestry tree and went and had a blood test and had all of that to discover him. They found that he had a chromosome that was well over 100,000 years. I think at that point, some of you that were there, it's 300,000 years ago. That is not common, okay? And they began to encourage people to have these histories, because they're trying to actually find out how far back our chromosomes will actually say our lineages exist. So with the Pueblo people and a lot of the societies that have totally not allowed modernization because they stay within those particular mastery fields, or magicians as they can very well be, we tend to look at them and disarm what they can do by what we think we see. And so here I feel that when he's talking very much about the great Atlantis, okay, and the Atlanteans themselves, that we were talking about an era of time when masters were very common. The population was very much aware of a lot of the very empowered powers we can have. You and I are now dealing with a science that says that all of this, the energy in the room you're sitting right now, you have everything that's coming down in the telephone, you have all of the radio waves, you have all kinds of frequencies and everything else. There is no open space, it's jammed. But how much do you actually know that you've already received the message before you answered your phone? And as the more we pursue that, and the more we awaken to that, the more we even just entertain it. You don't have to believe it, just entertain it. Be open to think about it. Because then the neural net starts pruning away the disbelief and the hardwire, and then little new shoots start showing up, and then you start seeing, you start having evidence. And that happens with you doing no more than to just not shut it down. You know, the I don't believe, save them, put them away, and just say, well, you know, I don't understand that. I don't know how, but, you know, okay. And allow that you begin to let it be with you for a while. Inevitably, the awakening happens. It isn't something you have to try or force yourself to do. It comes, and it will come even more. The prophecies say everything that we're going through right now, and how every country, even the very powerful world powers, have been humbled. Okay, you've got people on North America, and I'm talking about Canada and the US, that are absolutely decadent. What we have in wealth, what we have in just what we would consider the working class, our homeless lives better than people in other countries do. And so right now, that taking it for granted and that indifference that we've had, we're being brought back to reset and rethink some things. So no matter how hard we may think it is right now, or how scared we are and all the craziness that's going on about the virus, okay, this virus, you will only be immune to this virus when you catch it. We constantly are in the world of viruses, and that we have gotten so hysterical about this one is absolutely absurd, absolutely absurd. But that there are other things going on. The corruptions are being exposed. We now know that for all the people and the particular politicians that would not support the fact that pollution was taking out the ozone. Well, now that lots of people are not out there driving, what's happening? The ozone's mending. So we have firsthand proof that if we can do away with the toxic emissions and get clean energy, that we're not going to have the threat of our ozone dissipating. Then you see the animals coming back out into the parks. You see all kinds of good things happening. So to make all of this hysteria over the fact that you're afraid of dying and you're afraid of getting all the figures, and I'm involved with WHO, the World Health Organization. The figures are very misleading. And at this point, every time the news media whips out its sensationalism, it scares people again. And now that stress, that fear will actually make you more vulnerable to the virus. To actually do the intelligent thing of keeping a mask on, wearing gloves, if you're in a highly contaminated area, and because you don't know if it's highly contaminated, then do it. And go home and wash your hands like good kids. Your mommy taught you, go home, wash your hands. Don't eat anything till you wash your hands. So these things are what common sense, right? But here we are out here, everybody living locked down, and people act, I mean, let's throw some humor in here. How are you going to save the world with all that toilet paper them people went out and bought? Okay, and paper towels. Okay, what are you doing with all of that toilet paper and paper towels? And I have to say, my husband said to me, must have scared the poop out of everybody. They went and took all of the toilet paper. You know what I mean? And it's like, you're kidding me. He goes, no. He said, there's absolutely no toilet paper at all in the 3 stores I went to. And so from there, the hysteria and the craziness has started. Okay, take care of yourself. And if you feel that you don't know what's out there that's polluted, still go out and do what you have to do. If you're going shopping, protect yourself. But stop with the hysteria. Again, we're in the emotional game that totally destroys the immune system and takes you out of enlightenment. So we move on from there. But Toth is actually saying here, I love how even when he starts out, he's actually showing us the probability, if not the reality. Use it as a probability if you're not ready to open up to it. But the reality is, he's actually saying to us, these tablets are to help you know how it is all possible. And here's what the tablets go on to say, that for every one of them that mastered, that got to where Toth got, cuts the pathway that shortens it and makes it easier for the rest of us. Okay, and so when we read all of this and we start getting some understanding with it, it's really not as complicated or actually as hard to interpret as what it's being made to. If we just simply take the practical part of it, we're getting to wherever we can be. Again, with the word magician, it's talking about the enlightened ones that have powers. And you've seen people, I've witnessed a particular man in the Philippines, a doctor, that could put himself in trance and go into a body and remove a tumor. I watched a tumor as big as a grapefruit actually be brought out of a body. I have a friend that actually very close to me has had cancer in her breast, had 5 tumors, and she has worked it out and took those tumors out of her breast just by what she can do with her mind and how she's taking care of her body. It's still up to us. And we have to begin to live that. Then the next reset. Right now we're doing a reset, a universal reset, not only on our planet, but all of the cosmology around us. And as that gets to reset, we are not going to be able to go back to the dumbfounded realities of what we did before we got here. Okay, not as the little men of all the present age did the mighty ones of Atlantis live and die, but rather from eons to eon did they renew their life in the halls of Amenti, where the river of life flows eternally onward. They've already cut the path. We have been a part of that. You have been bringing the information, the consciousness through every day of your breath, every day. So right now, we are in a place to where we, the people, the consciousness of this world, can actually determine that we cannot bring peace with war. We cannot kill to resolve a situation. That to understand that we live in a duality is to know that there's night and day. What part of your day would you sacrifice for the other? See, I've gone up north to where they have 3-4 months of just daytime. Wasn't easy. I had to come out of there. And then they go through the other half of the year in the dark. It isn't easy. Everything up there grows differently because it doesn't experience the in and out of day and night. Everybody's system there is more alkaline. So there are effects to everything, and we have to, if we can just allow ourselves to think long enough to get them, we know that the masters, we know that Thoth is still with us. Whether you can accept he's the reincarnation of Jesus or not, doesn't matter. Can you grasp any of what he's trying to tell us here? Okay, does anyone else have any of the readings of Thoth that you have questions about that we could discuss? Because we're pretty much coming to the last 5-10 minutes.
Melissa?
I want to not just do the discussions. Okay, and if you decide that you want more discussions like what we've been having, that's fine. But I would like to deal with the scriptures. I would like to have more time to where we're reading and discussing the different phases and different perspectives of the actual scriptures. If you prefer that and would prefer that yourself, could you all show me your hands? Show me if you want to do more with the scriptures and less with the particular text message or the text material. So if you're interested in the scriptures, raise your hand. Okay, so that's the majority of us. All right, so we will deal more with reading the tablet and actually discussing what's going on in the tablet. So right now, we were going to start back, we were going to say we're going to start on page 45, 46 next week. I think we ought to go back and still deal with what Thoth said in these pages, since we've had lots of discussion on them, and actually see if there's anything we've missed in what the particular 3 or 4 quotes are from there. And then we have a few more quotes on 42, 43. I'm going to go back and we'll actually read them and talk about them as we move into the next part of the book, which will be 45. We pick it up, we end in 45, and we'll pick it up on 46 next Monday. I appreciate all of you who have actually brought a lot of particular understanding forward in what we're reading. I think that helps, and I definitely appreciate that we are coming to having more information of how it all starts to fit with everything. I understand, Melissa, you got your hands up. Do you have something you'd like to share? Melissa?
I'm here, but it was more on the discussion we were having as opposed to the text itself. So you wanted to switch back to the text, so.
No, it's okay. Go ahead and share what you wanted to.
Okay, well, in the Kabbalistic studies, one has to learn the Torah and the Mishnah first. And that gives you the ability to learn gematria, which is the science of numbers. And the science of numbers in the deepest mystery texts of Kabbalah actually refer to Platonic solids and geometry and the shifting of solid matter to higher states of solid matter. And that would also mean moving out of this tree into the next tree, et cetera, et cetera. So part of this reincarnation has to do with, actually the Celestine prophecy talks about it, where in the 10th insight is learning this and shifting into a light body so that you can still be seen in this third dimensional body, but you are in a light body with a broader perspective and not held into density. Why this becomes important is because reincarnation may or may not be a physical body going into another body. That may be a form of it, but it's also true that it is a body shifting into a higher tree of life, into a higher light body. And I would reiterate that that Jesus used Jewish teachings. The Christianity didn't exist when he talked about them. These
No.
were ancient Kabbalistic knowledge that also was influenced by Islamic mystics, where they all met at Safat and compared notes. And this comes from African lineage as well as Egyptian lineage. I could talk forever, but that's probably enough.
No, that's very, very good. And I like how it complements Trina's sharing, to where there's, I get invited quite often to speak at church, to different churches. And it amazes me how people don't understand the Bible, because what we're calling Old Testament is all Jewish history. Okay, New Testament is where they introduced Jesus into it and actually then made the whole history and the New Testament the Bible. Okay, and then I often have really sincere Christians that have, are in their 60s, 70s, that have spent their whole life studying it, that if they could only get the kind of information you're talking about, just tidbits of that, how they would understand their questions, because they actually want to know, what am I supposed to do with the Old Testament? I understand that I can live by what the New Testament's telling me. Can you help me understand what would I do? What am I supposed to do with the Old Testament? And it becomes like, for those like yourself and me and all the rest of us, the Kabbalah has tremendous, I appreciate that. Please, as we move along, keep bringing back references with that, and the numbers, the mathematics, the fact that all of our geometry and all of the sacred numbers and everything, that is the only true reality. This, what we make of it, is the illusion of our own reality. Okay, so please bring all that in. But yes, and right now, to know the very large crusades of Christianity and how many people are actually following the Christian crusades and coming into that, it's heart lifting to see people turn to actually finding truth if they can. But it bothers me that they're buying into the hell and damnation. And like I said, just a little bit of the Kabbalah, just a little bit of the true understanding of why that Old Testament has any importance would actually pave the way as to why they're using it to be the front part of the New Testament. And when we're looking at this point, who of us can say exactly what all Jesus to? When you read when I read the Old Testament, or what I would consider the old part of the Bible, it's nothing but all of the things that you and I talked about, but we were called crazy. Okay, fiery chariots. Okay, lifted in the sky. Yeah, you're going to call it that if you've never seen a spaceship take off. Okay, now when I see a spaceship talk, I could understand that they're talking about some kind of airlift that took off, right? And then you had one of our prophets on it. Yeah, now I don't have a problem with that anymore. But yeah, until you get into the in-depth teachings, you can be pretty lost. And like I said, these people follow it all their lives, only in the final moments to really fear that because they couldn't understand it, that they're going to hell. I have a hard time with that. And just to introduce, I don't introduce them to the hardcore stuff we're talking about, but I always introduce them with just another way to maybe think about it. If we look at it more to what we understand today, maybe it could be saying this. And they're very hungry for that. They grab onto that very fast. So thank you very much. And please stay tuned and throw your 2 cents in as many times as you can, Melissa. Okay. Okay, you have your hand open again. You wanted to say more?
I was just going to reiterate what you said, but when you said, how do we study the New Testament? I said, well, or the Old Testament, it's learn gematria, because if you read the words, that's one cell deep. If you study Kabbalah and the science of it, that's like as deep as you want to go. The entire Old Testament is written in a secret code. That's all I have to say. And it comes through when you study gematria and the science of rearranging the words, because that's a huge part of the mystery of Judaism. It's hidden in the text, and it isn't for lay people it said that you shouldn't study Kabbalah until you're 40. That had nothing to do with the age. It had to do with having teenagers. And every time you feel so high and mighty studying these holy things, your teenagers who could care less will let you know that you're not so important. And that's why that law was created.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot. Okay, we're kind of at the bottom of our time here, and we're going to be taking off. I appreciate all of you for coming in. It was good to see some new faces. I see you over there on the screen someplace, Ron Mayer, so good to have you on board. Good to see you. Make sure you put your 2 cents in here, okay? And for all of you young people that have joined us, please don't let us scare you off, and please keep talking and let us know what it is you see and understand, because it is definitely you seeding the rest of the world that we're doing our best for here. So everyone be safe and be well, and we'll catch you next Monday. OCO.